The birthday party had been everything a 10-year-old could want. David and Daniel had torn through presents with the enthusiasm typical of children their age, surrounded by friends, family, and the warm chaos of a house full of celebration. Marcus had helped coordinate party games and supervised the inevitable sugar-fueled energy that followed the birthday cake. As the last guest departed and the Williams family began cleaning up, Sarah approached Marcus with the serious expression he had been expecting. "Marcus, would you mind staying a bit longer?" Sarah asked quietly. "Robert and I need to discuss something important with you, and we'd like the boys to be part of the conversation too." Marcus felt a flutter of concern but nodded his agreement. David and Daniel were in the living room, examining their new gifts and comparing notes about which friends had given them what. They looked up curiously when their parents and Marcus entered the room with unusually formal expressions. "Boys, come sit down," Robert said gently. "We have something very important to share with all of you." David and Daniel exchanged glances before settling onto the couch beside Marcus. Sarah sat across from them, holding a manila envelope that Marcus had not noticed earlier. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it and withdrew several documents and photographs. "Marcus, do you remember when you first found the boys and Angela was taken into custody?" Sarah began carefully. "Of course," Marcus replied. "That was the beginning of everything for all of us." Sarah nodded and took a deep breath. "What you didn't know at the time was that Angela provided more information to Child Protective Services than was included in the police report. She was scared and confused, but she did share some details about the boy's father." Marcus felt his heart rate increase slightly. In all the years since the rescue, the question of David and Daniel's biological father had rarely been discussed. The focus had always been on their future, not their origins. According to Angela's statement, Sarah continued, the boy's father was someone she had met during a brief relationship about 11 months before their birth. She described him as a kind man who had tried to help her get clean from drugs, but she had been too scared to tell him about her pregnancy when she realized he was a police officer. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He stared at Sarah, trying to process what she was suggesting while his mind raced through memories from over 10 years ago. David and Daniel were watching the adults intently, sensing the gravity of the conversation but not yet understanding its implications. Sarah handed Marcus a photograph from the envelope. Angela was able to provide this description to a police artist, and it was filed with their case records. Marcus looked down at the sketch and felt the room spin around him. The face staring back at him was unmistakably his own, captured in remarkable detail despite being based on a drug-addicted teenager's memory from years earlier. Every feature, from the shape of his eyes to the line of his jaw, had been accurately rendered by the police artist. "We've known about this for several months," Robert said quietly. "But we wanted to have DNA testing done to be absolutely certain before we said anything to you or the boys." Sarah reached back into the envelope and withdrew a laboratory report with official letterhead. "The sample came from the hair you left on the baseball cap you loaned to David during their camping trip last summer. We compared it with samples from both boys." Marcus's hands shook as he accepted the document. The scientific terminology was complex, but the conclusion was written in clear, bold letters. Probability of paternity, 99.97% for both subjects. The silence in the room stretched for what felt like hours. David and Daniel looked back and forth between the adults, beginning to understand that something life-changing was being revealed. Marcus stared at the DNA report, reading the same conclusion over and over as his mind struggled to accept what he was seeing. "You mean," Daniel said slowly, "Uncle Mark is our real dad?" Sarah nodded, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "Yes, honey. Marcus is your biological father." David's eyes widened as he looked directly at Marcus. "So when you saved us in that building, you were really saving your own kids?" Marcus tried to speak but found that no words would come. The magnitude of what he was learning had left him completely speechless. For 10 years he had loved these boys as if they were his own children, never knowing that they actually were. The bond he had felt from the very first moment. The natural connection that everyone had commented on. The resemblance that had grown more obvious as they aged, It all made perfect sense now. I remember Angela, Marcus finally managed to whisper. She was just a kid herself, maybe 19 or 20. We met at a community center where I was volunteering. She was trying to get clean, and I helped her find treatment programs and safe places to stay. The memories came flooding back with painful clarity. Angela had been intelligent and sweet when she was sober, but her addiction had been stronger than her desire to change. After several weeks of promising progress, she had disappeared without explanation, and Marcus had never seen her again. He had worried about her for months, hoping she had found help somewhere else. She never told me about being pregnant, Marcus continued, his voice growing stronger. If I had known, I would have done everything possible to help her and the babies. Sarah reached across and took his hand. She knew that, Marcus. According to her statement, she was ashamed of her relapse and afraid that involving you would ruin your police career. She thought she was protecting you by keeping the pregnancy secret. Robert leaned forward in his chair. Marcus, we want you to know that this doesn't change anything about our family structure unless you want it to. You've been David and Daniel's father in every way that matters since the day you found them. We've just learned that biology was part of that bond all along. David stood up and walked over to Marcus, studying his face with new understanding. We always thought we looked like you, he said matter-of-factly. Now we know why. Daniel joined his brother, and both boys wrapped their arms around Marcus in a spontaneous group hug. Does this mean we can call you Dad instead of Uncle Mark? Daniel asked, and Marcus felt tears streaming down his face as he held his sons, his actual sons, for the first time knowing who they really were. Only if you want to, he managed to say. Nothing has to change unless you want it to. I want it to, David said immediately. You've been our dad all along anyway. Me too, Daniel agreed. It just makes it official. Sarah and Robert were both crying now as they watched the reunion unfold. There's one more thing, Sarah said softly. We've been in contact with Angela. She's been clean for 3 years now and works as a counselor at a treatment center in Cleveland. She wanted us to tell you how grateful she is for everything you've done for David and Daniel. She said knowing they were with you gave her the strength to get her life together. Marcus looked up in surprise. Angela is okay? More than okay, Robert replied. She's married now and has a daughter. She's built a good life for herself, but she's never forgotten the boys or what she put them through. She hopes that someday, when they're older, they might want to meet her, but she understands if that never happens. The boys exchanged glances, processing this information about their birth mother. Maybe when we're grown up, David said thoughtfully. If she's better now. There's no pressure either way, Marcus said, finding his voice again. We'll figure all of this out together, as a family. The conversation continued late into the evening as they discussed the practical and emotional implications of the revelation. Legal paperwork would need to be filed to reflect Marcus's biological relationship to the twins, but the Williams family made it clear that they considered themselves grandparents and wanted to maintain their close relationship, regardless of the new information. Marcus stayed overnight for the first time since the boys were babies, sleeping in the guest room but being awakened several times by David and Daniel, knocking on his door to ask questions or simply to confirm that the amazing news was real. Each time, Marcus reassured them that yes, he was their biological father, and yes, this meant their family was even more special than they had realized. The next morning, as Marcus prepared to leave for work, both boys hugged him goodbye with newfound intensity. See you later, Dad, David said, testing out the new title. Drive safe, Dad, Daniel added. Grinning at how natural the word sounded, Marcus drove to the police station in a daze, still processing the life-changing information from the previous evening. His colleagues noticed his unusual mood immediately, and by lunchtime, the story had spread throughout the department. Captain Rodriguez called Marcus into his office to congratulate him and to discuss how the revelation might affect his current caseload. Thompson, the captain said with a smile. In 30 years of police work, I've never heard of anything like this. You literally saved your own children without knowing it. That's either the best police instincts I've ever seen, or the most incredible coincidence in department history. Maybe a little of both, Marcus replied. Still adjusting to his new reality, the weeks following the revelation brought significant changes to everyone's daily routines. Marcus began spending more time at the Williams house, participating in homework supervision and bedtime routines that had previously. As David and Daniel grew from toddlers into elementary school children, Marcus Thompson's life took on new dimensions he had never expected. The twins had become central figures in his world, even though he was not their legal guardian. Every major holiday, birthday celebration, and school event included Uncle Mark. As the boys continued to call him with obvious affection, Marcus had been promoted twice since the warehouse rescue, eventually becoming a detective specializing in cases involving children and families. His colleagues often joked that finding those babies had changed his entire approach to police work, turning him into Detroit's most dedicated advocate for young people in crisis. They were not wrong. The experience had awakened something in Marcus that drove him to pursue every case with the same urgency he had felt that cold February morning. The Williams family had moved to a larger house in Birmingham when the twins turned 5, providing each boy with his own bedroom while maintaining a shared playroom where they spent most of their time together. David had developed a fascination with building blocks and mechanical toys, often constructing elaborate structures that impressed adults with their complexity and creativity. Daniel showed an early aptitude for reading and storytelling, making up adventures for his action figures and entertaining family gatherings with his imaginative tales. Marcus made a point of attending the twins' school events whenever his work schedule permitted. He watched them participate in kindergarten graduation ceremonies, school plays, and Little League baseball games. Other parents often assumed he was Robert Williams' brother, as the resemblance between Marcus and the twins seemed to grow more noticeable as they aged. Sarah Williams had mentioned this observation several times, noting how David's facial expressions particularly mirrored Marcus's mannerisms. During the summer when David and Daniel turned 7, the Williams family invited Marcus to join them for a camping trip to northern Michigan. The week-long vacation gave Marcus extended time with the twins in a relaxed setting, away from the demands of his police work and their structured school routine. Around the campfire at night, the boys would beg Marcus to tell them stories about his police adventures. Though he carefully selected tales that were exciting but not frightening for young children on that camping trip, Marcus noticed how naturally he and the twins communicated with each other. They seemed to understand his sense of humor and shared similar interests in outdoor activities and problem-solving games. David especially enjoyed helping Marcus with camp maintenance tasks, showing an intuitive understanding of how things worked and how problems could be solved through practical action. Robert Williams had begun asking Marcus whether he had ever considered having children of his own. At 32, Marcus was settled in his career and financially stable, but he had never found the right relationship or felt the calling to start a family. His response was always that David and Daniel had filled that role in his life in ways he had never anticipated. Being their honorary uncle provided all the joy of watching children grow without the daily responsibilities of parenthood. As the twins entered 3rd grade, their academic abilities began to distinguish them from their classmates. David excelled in mathematics and science, often finishing assignments quickly and asking for additional challenges. Daniel's reading level was several grades ahead of his age group, and his creative writing assignments consistently earned praise from teachers. Both boys showed leadership qualities on the playground and in group projects. Marcus began attending parent-teacher conferences with the Williams family, offering perspectives on the boys' development that often surprised their teachers with their insight and accuracy. He seemed to understand their motivations and learning styles in ways that complemented Robert and Sarah's parenting approach. The teachers began to include him in conversations about the twins, educational planning, and future opportunities. The twins' 8th birthday party was a neighborhood event, with dozens of classmates and their families gathering at the Williams home for an elaborate celebration. Marcus arrived early to help with setup and stayed late for cleanup, functioning seamlessly as part of the extended family. During the party, several neighbors commented on how much David looked like Marcus, particularly when they stood together opening presents or organizing games that same year. Marcus decided to pursue additional education in criminal justice and child psychology, enrolling in evening classes at Wayne State University. His goal was to become more effective in his detective work, but the coursework also deepened his understanding of child development and family dynamics. The knowledge he gained helped him better support David and Daniel as they navigated the challenges of growing up. When the twins turned 9, they began asking Marcus more detailed questions about the day he found them in the warehouse. They had always known the basic story of their rescue, but they were now old enough to understand the seriousness of their situation and the role Marcus had played in saving their lives. Their questions revealed a mature appreciation for the gravity of what had happened and genuine gratitude for the chance at life they had been given. Marcus began sharing more details about their early days in the hospital and the first time he met Robert and Sarah Williams. The twins were fascinated to learn about their medical recovery and the careful attention they had received from doctors and nurses. They also expressed curiosity about their birth mother, though Marcus was careful to provide only age-appropriate information about Angela's struggles with addiction and homelessness. During the twins' 4th grade year, Marcus was assigned to investigate a case involving a child who had been abandoned in circumstances similar to David and Daniel's early situation. The experience brought back powerful memories of that February morning in 1987, but it also reinforced his sense of purpose in his career. He successfully located the child's family and facilitated a reunion that resulted in the mother receiving treatment for her addiction and the child being safely returned home. Marcus shared this experience with the Williams family during one of their regular Sunday dinners, noting how his work with David and Daniel had prepared him to handle such cases with greater skill and empathy. Sarah Williams observed that his relationship with the twins had made him a better police officer. While his police experience had made him a better mentor to them, the twins had begun showing interest in Marcus's work, asking questions about police procedures and criminal investigations. David was particularly fascinated by the forensic science aspects of detective work, while Daniel was drawn to the interviewing and communication skills required to solve cases. Marcus began bringing age-appropriate materials about law enforcement careers, encouraging their curiosity while ensuring they understood both the challenges and rewards of public service. As David and Daniel approached their 10th birthday, Marcus realized that nearly a decade had passed since that life-changing morning in the warehouse. The frightened, malnourished infants he had held in his arms had grown into confident, intelligent young boys who brought joy and purpose to everyone around them. Their presence in his life had shaped his career choices, his personal relationships, and his understanding of what it meant to be part of a family. The Williams family had become Marcus's closest friends and most important personal relationships. Robert and Sarah often invited him for holidays and family vacations, treating him as a brother rather than simply a family friend. Their other adopted children had also grown close to Marcus, creating a complex but loving extended family network that defied traditional definitions but worked perfectly for everyone involved. Marcus had received numerous commendations and awards during his police career, but none meant more to him than the handmade Father's Day card that David and Daniel had presented to him the previous year. The card had featured crayon drawings of the three of them together, with a message thanking Uncle Mark for being the best almost dad they could have asked for. Marcus had kept the card in his desk drawer at work, pulling it out whenever he needed reminder of why his job mattered. The twins' 10th birthday celebration was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon in early February, just a few days before the anniversary of their rescue. As Marcus prepared for the party, he reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought them all together and the ways their lives had become intertwined through a combination of chance, choice, and what some might call destiny. Sarah Williams had mentioned that she wanted to have a serious conversation with Marcus after the birthday celebration, though she had not provided details about the topic. Marcus assumed she wanted to discuss plans for the twins' upcoming transition to middle school or perhaps their interest in more advanced academic programs. He looked forward to the conversation, as the Williams family's insights about David and Daniel always helped him better understand his role in their lives. As he drove to Birmingham for the birthday party that Saturday afternoon, Marcus could not have imagined that the conversation with Sarah Williams would reveal information that would fundamentally change his understanding of his relationship with David and Daniel. The shocking news that awaited him would connect pieces of a puzzle he had not even realized existed, explaining Th. Officer Marcus Thompson had been walking the beat in downtown Detroit for only 6 months when the call came through. His radio on that freezing February morning in 1987, the dispatcher's voice crackled with urgency as she reported screaming coming from an abandoned warehouse on East Jefferson Avenue. Marcus adjusted his heavy winter coat and quickened his pace toward the industrial district, his breath forming white clouds in the bitter Michigan air. The warehouse district had seen better days. Most of the massive brick buildings stood empty, their windows either boarded up or shattered by vandals. Drug dealers and homeless people often used these structures for shelter, making them dangerous territories for a young officer to patrol alone. But Marcus had grown up in these neighborhoods. He understood the streets and the people who lived in the shadows of society. As he approached the warehouse, Marcus could hear what sounded like babies crying. The sounds seemed to echo from inside the 3-story building, bouncing off the concrete walls and floating through broken windows. He radioed for backup and medical assistance before carefully approaching the main entrance. The heavy metal door hung slightly open, creaking in the wind. Inside the warehouse, the crying grew louder. Marcus pulled out his flashlight and swept it across the cavernous space. Machinery had been abandoned decades ago, leaving behind rusted conveyor belts and empty workstations. The smell of mold and decay filled his nostrils as he moved deeper into the building. Following the sound of the infants' in the far corner of the warehouse, behind a stack of wooden pallets, Marcus discovered a makeshift shelter. Cardboard boxes had been arranged to form walls, and old blankets created a roof over the small space. Inside this crude shelter, he found 2 tiny babies, no more than a few days old, wrapped in dirty towels and crying from hunger and cold. The babies appeared to be twins, both with dark skin and tiny fists waving frantically as they cried. Marcus immediately called for emergency medical services while gently checking on the infants. They were alive but clearly malnourished and suffering from exposure to the cold. He carefully lifted both babies, holding them close to his body to share his warmth. As Marcus waited for the ambulance, he noticed a young woman hiding behind a pile of debris nearby. She appeared to be in her late teens, wearing torn clothing and showing signs of drug use. When she saw Marcus holding the babies, she broke down crying and approached him slowly. Her name was Angela, and through her tears, she explained that she had given birth to the twins 3 days earlier with no medical assistance. She had been living on the streets for months, struggling with addiction and unable to care for herself, let alone 2 newborn babies. She knew she could not provide what they needed to survive. Angela told Marcus that she had been hoping someone would find the babies before it was too late. She had chosen the warehouse because she knew police officers patrolled the area regularly. In her own desperate way, she had been trying to give her children a chance at life by placing them where they would be discovered. The paramedics arrived and immediately began assessing the twins' condition. Both babies were severely dehydrated and underweight, but they were breathing normally and responded to stimulation. The medical team worked quickly to stabilize them for transport to Detroit Children's Hospital. Marcus rode in the ambulance with the babies, monitoring their condition during the short trip to the hospital. The twins seemed to calm down when he spoke to them in soft, reassuring tones. Something about these 2 tiny lives touched something deep in his heart. He had joined the police force to help people, but he had never imagined he would be holding 2 newborn babies, who might not have survived another day in that cold warehouse. At the hospital, doctors confirmed that while the babies were in serious condition, they had a strong chance of recovery with proper medical care and nutrition. The twins were placed in the neonatal intensive care unit, where specialized equipment monitored their vital signs and provided the warmth and nutrition their tiny bodies desperately needed. Marcus completed his report about the rescue and the circumstances surrounding the case. Child Protective Services would now take over, working to find suitable homes for the twins once they were healthy enough to leave the hospital. Angela was taken into custody but also received medical attention and was connected with social services to help address her addiction. Over the following weeks, Marcus found himself returning to the hospital during his off-duty hours to check on the twins' progress. The nurses told him that both babies were responding well to treatment and gaining weight steadily. They had been named David and Daniel by the hospital staff. As Angela had been unable to provide names before she was taken into custody, the twins spent nearly 2 months in the hospital before they were declared healthy enough for adoption. During this time, Marcus had become attached to them, visiting whenever his schedule allowed and even bringing small gifts like blankets and toys. The hospital staff began to refer to him as the baby's guardian angel. When David and Daniel were finally released from the hospital, they were placed with the Williams family, an experienced couple who had already adopted 3 other children. Robert and Sarah Williams lived in a comfortable suburban home in Bloomfield Hills, about 45 minutes from downtown Detroit. They had been trying to adopt infant twins for several years and were overjoyed to welcome David and Daniel into their family. Marcus was invited to meet the Williams family before the official adoption was finalized. Robert Williams was a successful businessman who owned a small manufacturing company, while Sarah was a registered nurse who had chosen to stay home to care for their adopted children. They had created a warm, stable home environment where the twins would have every opportunity to thrive. The Williams family insisted that Marcus remain in contact with the twins as they grew up. They recognized the special role he had played in saving their lives and wanted him to be part of their extended family. Marcus was deeply moved by their generosity and accepted their invitation to visit regularly. As months passed, Marcus watched David and Daniel transform from the tiny, malnourished infants he had found in that warehouse into healthy, happy babies. The twins were inseparable, often sleeping curled up together and crying when they were separated for even short periods. Their bond was remarkable to witness, and everyone who met them commented on their special connection. Marcus continued his police work with renewed purpose, knowing that his actions had directly saved 2 lives and given them a chance at a better future. The Williams family sent him regular updates and photos showing the twins' progress and milestones. David took his first steps just before his first birthday, with Daniel following closely behind 2 days later. The rescue had changed Marcus in profound ways. He approached his job with greater compassion and understanding, particularly when dealing with cases involving children or vulnerable individuals. His colleagues noticed his increased dedication and empathy, and he quickly gained a reputation as an officer who went above and beyond to help people in crisis. Marcus also developed a deeper appreciation for the complexity of social problems like addiction and homelessness. Angela's situation had shown him how quickly someone's life could spiral out of control and how difficult it could be to find help when you needed it most. He began volunteering at local shelters and community programs during his free time, hoping to prevent other families from facing similar, desperate circumstances. The twins' first birthday celebration was held at the Williams home, and Marcus was treated as an honored guest. David and Daniel had grown into curious, energetic toddlers who brought joy to everyone around them. As Marcus watched them playing together in their safe, loving home, he reflected on how different their lives might have been if he had arrived at that warehouse even a few hours later. The story of the rescue had spread throughout the Detroit Police Department and the local community. Marcus received commendations for his actions and was featured in several newspaper articles about his dedication to protecting the city's most vulnerable residents. But for Marcus, the greatest reward was simply watching David and Daniel grow up healthy and loved. As the twins approached their second birthday, Marcus had become like an uncle to them. They would run to greet him whenever he visited, calling him Uncle Mark and showing him their toys and latest accomplishments. The Williams family had created photo albums documenting the twins' growth, with pictures of Marcus present at many of their important milestones. Little did Marcus know that his connection to David and Daniel would lead to a revelation that would change his understanding of family, destiny, and the mysterious ways that life brings people together for reasons far beyond what anyone could imagine.